Welcome to the New Zealand Optimist webinar. We're here with Andrew Wills and Chris Steele. And today we're going to be talking about race planning and general training putting up to your pinnacle events. We've got Andrew and Chris with us as well. Andrew's been a New Zealand IOTA coach for over 10 years. And he was coached the world's team 5 times, and it was with Andrew's coaching when Chris won the worlds in 2007. So I'll pass it over to the guys to kick us off, Andrew and Chris.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Desi. Desi failed to mention that he was actually one of the first New Zealand representatives in the Opti Worlds team. So all of us have been quite involved over the years, but a little bit of stuff's changed. Anyway, we didn't want to bang on too much about sales straight away, and just thought we'd share a little bit of our experiences and stuff. So it's pretty cool for me to be here with Chris again after a few years apart. We've sailed keelboats together a little bit recently, but yeah, it's good to be sort of back working together here. So I suppose we'll just get into it, Chris, eh? First slide.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, and here we go. There's a photo there of Chris and I at the Opti Worlds when he won. And also, obviously, the rest of the team did well too. We had Alex in 3rd overall and first girl, and the team won first team. So it was a really cool feeling to be there. And there's a photo of Derek, who's our One Design manager. And that's what he's been sailing a lot of lately, a Paper Tiger, and doing really well. He's either first or second in nationals and inter-dominions and stuff, and really enjoying it. All right, so personally, when I started taking on the coaching with the New Zealand team, my sort of philosophy was to be not really to focus on the Opti. There's a lot of shortcuts you can take coaching the Opti. You can sort of do hiking styles that aren't going to put you in good stead for later, and things like that. And I wanted it to be all encompassing. I wasn't too concerned about where we came in the Opti, because sailing's a lifelong sport, like we all know. So anyway, I tried to teach them a long-term sort of thing, and it seemed to work out in the short term pretty well as well. Chris could probably tell some stories about like hiking styles and how it's affected you with your back and stuff.
Yeah, I think especially when you're sort of growing up and you're young, obviously everyone's pretty athletic and flexible and whatnot. It's really, and it's something that I really sort of noticed when I transitioned into coaching, a few years later on, that it's very easy to get caught up in bad techniques and postures and things, and not really be aware of it at the time, because you don't really feel any effects from it, at that sort of age. But fast forward a couple of years to a time where your body starts to change shape and things, and if you've built up the wrong muscles in the wrong areas, then that can actually really change the way your whole body sort of sets up. And I was probably guilty of it, especially when I was younger, being in the Opti, ending up being quite a big sailor. You end up with really bad posture, and you're sort of always hunching over and slouching and sort of not sitting back, and definitely catches up to you. So yeah, once I sort of started coaching a few years later, I noticed that a lot with some of the kids, that the posture and the technique sometimes, whilst it might be effective right there and then, it definitely catches up to you later on. So I think the earlier you can get onto making sure that you address those issues, the easier it is to get into the right habits, and that'll do you wonders later on in life.
Nice. And then the other things I tried to teach the guys were like an appreciation for the ocean. This was this all-encompassing approach that I used. And we did a little bit of keelboat sailing. We'd take the guys out, sort of and they'd all be, someone would be calling the puffs of wind, someone would be steering, they'd be learning other things. So once again, that long-term approach. I suppose we did a bit of model yacht sailing and even just things like long distance sailing. I suppose, Chris, can you sort of explain how instead of just going around marks, how some other types of sailing really can help you? Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the Opti in particular is quite a simple class of boat. There's not a lot that you can sort of change to the setup, but because of that, the basics become really important. And like you said, when you just lay, a bunch of marks that you're constantly going around the same direction and, the same sort of length, you get very good at, doing things right there in the moment. But in terms of long-term planning, it doesn't really teach you sort of a whole lot of that kind of thing. So, if you can get ahead of the game early on and start adding sort of more strings to your bow and figuring out different ways that you can go about planning a race, particularly if you start doing more long distance stuff, you might go upwind for an hour and a half. And that sort of teaches you to start looking further up the race course. And so instead of looking for the next wind shift, you've already figured out, what the next wind shift's going to be, and you're trying to work out how to link it to the next one, which you've figured out is sort of where it's coming from. So I think, any chance that you get to be a bit more versatile and, go and have a look at sailing from a different perspective, whether it's on a keelboat or, like you said, Willsy, with, remote control model yachts or whatever, there's always different ways that you can figure out the same sort of aspects of sailing and reapply it back to, in this case, the Opti. There's a lot of different skills that you can add to that from, sailing various classes.
No, really good, Chris. One of my theories is you learn from everything you do, and even, doing something totally different, like a long distance race, you might learn about tidal strategy, and you can go back and apply it to your windward leeward racing, your trapezoid racing for Optis. So yeah, just everything you do, you can learn from it and pull it all together and make you a really good all-round sailor.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And for seeing the Opti sailors come from sailing by themselves, and then they go into the P class and the Starling, if that's the progression they get. And I see it, and I've talked to a few customers and sailors when they go into the double-handed classes. It's quite a challenge to communicate with someone else. So if you get the chance to, sail on a keelboat or a double-handed boat, or, there's lots of boats there now, like the Fever and those sort of boats that are creeping in, that people can, then the Opti guys and girls can jump in and just learn a different skill and communicating with someone else. Because after sailing the Optimist and the single-handed boats for so long, it is a challenge to try and sail with other people, because you're doing everything yourself. So, and the more you get out there to sail other boats and with other people, the better sailor you become.
Yeah, I agree. I remember my first keelboat race, I pretty much tacked the boat without telling anyone, because I was so used to doing it myself, and the whole crew's on the rail with their legs in the water on the wrong side. So yeah, it definitely is something that you want to learn to communicate after sailing single-handed so much. So moving on from our sort of philosophy of coaching and being coached, some things that were really important to me that stood out during the coaching was, one of the biggest things was respect. The guys had to respect me, the coach. I had to respect them as sailors. They had to respect the young sailors there, because, even though you're an older Opti sailor, let's say, one day these young guys are going to be trying to beat you. So don't give them any jib now. Respect them. Respect all your teammates. That's a big one. We had to have harmony in the team, and we did a lot of team building stuff. Respecting start lines, even in training. Like, there's no point starting over the line all the time, eh, Chris?
Yeah, I learned that one. the hard way.
Yeah, he did. But you know, if you're not respecting that start line at training, you're really kidding yourself. And I really love sailing. You got to respect the weather, the ocean, the all that sort of things, because it's a pretty powerful beast. And one of the biggest things, and now I'm one of them, and Derek's one of them, and maybe Chris one day, is respecting your parents. Your parents put a lot into the sailing, a lot of time, effort, money. So respecting them is a big deal. I'm not so sure, Chris, you got anything you want to add in there?
Nah, I mean, yeah, I think especially the last one you touched on, like the parents, it's an interesting one because obviously, as I sort of learned when I started coaching, like there's quite a range of parenting styles that sort of people approach with their kids, and sometimes it's quite difficult to manage. So I think a big one on that as well is like having the parents make sure they respect the coach and understand that the coach is there to do a job and do the best job for everyone involved. And so, you know, making sure that they also give the room that the coach sort of needs to work in an environment where it's comfortable for everyone. And obviously everyone wants to see their own kids do well, but I think as we sort of found out in particularly our last year at the Worlds, you know, if one kid's going well, then everyone sort of feeds off that. And so, you know, we created an environment amongst the team where all the parents were very involved with all the kids in the team. It wasn't just about, you know, helping your own kid. If anything, it was more about, you know, almost assigning other parents to be involved to help out with the team overall, so that there's very much a learning environment, and we all kind of pushed each other. And if one kid was doing really well in the team, it wasn't like there was 4 others that were upset and not happy about it. You know, everyone was happy because we got to a point where we all knew we were as good as each other, and we were just happy to be able to turn up as best prepared as we can, and whoever was able to put it together was, you know, everyone was going to be happy for that. So I think the environment that the parents help create as well is super important.
Yeah, totally. Okay, the next one is assumptions and assuming things. As a coach, I remember basically assuming a few things, and you know, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. It's the mother of all. It really caused some problems. So I remember even one person, they were a national champion that I coached that will remain nameless, and I assumed they knew how to go backwards on a start line. They didn't know how to go backwards, and so I had to teach them, and it was quite late in life, and that person went on to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So don't assume that anyone knows anything. And another thing is, I assumed everyone that I coached wanted to be the national champ or the world champ. Some people don't. And once I found that out, I changed the way I coached them. So yeah, just assume nothing. Then the next thing is trust. Like, obviously, there's got to be a lot of trust between the coach and the sailor. So, and it doesn't happen quickly. Like, Chris, would you sort of, we were together for quite a few years, I suppose, leading up to it. Yeah, and how do you feel that sort of, in the end, did you trust me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny sort of how you go through so periods in time. I remember when we went to our first Worlds together, for me that was my first international event in the Optimist. You know, I hadn't even gone outside of New Zealand, so you know, for me that was quite a big challenge, and I didn't really know too much what to expect. And I remember, you know, we had quite a few lengthy sort of conversations about, you know, some of the events he had done in the past with the teams, and you know what we sort of could expect. But from that point on, fast forward, you know, 8 months or whatever to the second Worlds, I think after working together a lot, you know, we learned a lot about sort of what we wanted from each other and how we were sort of going to pass that information on. And yeah, you get to a point where obviously, you fully trust the person that you're working with, and especially me being so young at the time, you'd sort of open your eyes and ears to everything that sort of comes out of your mouth. So I think for sure, and in all aspects of sailing, you can't really say enough about the person who's, the eyes from behind, in the coach boat. You can see a whole lot more than, there's so much going on. And even in the Optimist, when you're sitting there, you've got so much going through your mind at the time, and everything that's sort of happening around you. It's very difficult to see the overall picture sometimes. So, having someone there that can give you, a real perspective and open your eyes to what's happening around you, I think is massive. So yeah, for sure, you got to be able to trust them.
Cool. And yeah, I'd just say try and stick with your coach as long as you can. So you just build that up. Yeah, it's pretty hard chopping and changing all the time. The next thing we did with our training is we did sail in quite a lot of extreme conditions, both ways, quite windy, like borderline dangerous, to very boring light airs. And maybe we wouldn't race in those two, but you guys could sail in anything, and that was really important to me.
Yeah, I think especially that's where we were quite lucky being down in New Zealand. Obviously, where in New Zealand you get weather conditions that are almost never the same 2 days in a row, and you can go out one day and it might be 25, 30 knots, and then the next day, it might be five knots. And so I think we were quite fortunate in that regard, being down here, this end of the world, that, we do get a big range of conditions, and sort of in a lot of the countries that I've been to around the world, it sort of seems when we turn up and we do an event, you get very similar breeze throughout the whole kind of week. So I think, like you said, if you can definitely get out, and even on days where it's going to be too windy. I remember the Worlds we did, I think it was 5 races, and breeze, it was 25 to 33 knots, in a class where the maximum wind limit is supposed to be 25 knots. Most people probably wouldn't have raced in that ever, but I remember plenty of days down here in New Zealand where we would go out in 30 knots, and with the air being a lot more dense down here, it feels like a lot more than 30 knots. So we were comfortable in those conditions. You could see some of the other countries that just looked like it was a completely different sport for them.
Nice. And then the next point I had was sharing info. Our group was relatively open, and that sort of came passed down from successful windsurfers like Bruce Kendall and Aaron McIntosh. Back in the day, they were the top in the world at windsurfing, and they believed that they'd just share, both get better, and whoever deserved to win would win. And that's the attitude we took with our group. Like, there were no real secrets. We tried to share as much as we could, and whoever was going to win on the day would win on the day. And it really showed with the whole team being right up there. Any one of you guys could have won that regatta, in my opinion. Yeah. Would you like any comments there, or?
Yeah, it is a tough one to share info, but to make your whole group move forward quicker, it is important. And I think you got to think about, if people are just following what you're doing, they're always, if you're worried about sharing your information and they'll, leapfrog you, well, they're kind of always a step behind if they're going to just be following your, taking your info and moving towards. So, don't be scared about sharing info with your friends and that, because they're just going to be catching up a little bit and pushing you and making you work harder. So, and then you'll make the next step or think of something else. So it is important to share the info, and that's the way you're gonna get better and leap forward.
Yeah, I think as well, like a lot of that comes back to sort of what your goals are and how you set them. Like I remember, especially sort of in New Zealand, like all of our selections back then were based off the one regatta, which was the Nationals. And so, you're doing all these regattas throughout the year, and you can see kind of where you stack up. And there was probably about 10 or 12 guys in New Zealand that had a serious chance of making that world's team, which was obviously everyone's sort of goal. And, once we qualified for the world, then the focus switches very much from it being like an individual aspect where you're trying to qualify yourself, to all of a sudden you're working with a group of guys that are going to give you the best chance possible to do well at the next event. You know, it becomes very much a team environment. I remember very early on, like I probably struggled with that more than anyone. You know, with my competitive nature, always wanting to win, it was, you know, here I am like sailing along and going really well in 12 or 13 knots. I'm higher and faster than everyone in their world. He would come along with his coach boat and his video camera, and I'd sort of tone it back a little bit. And it was like, I remember we spent like a whole afternoon sort of trying to figure out like what I was doing different to the rest of the team. And, you know, they came up with some ideas, and then we went out and practiced it the next day, and no one could get it. And it was kind of like, for me, I remember thinking at the time that it was like I had something to hide because it was better. But then, you know, fast forward, you know, you get a little bit older, and we started setting up for the second Worlds, and you realise that once you're qualified, the guys that you're training with every day are the guys that are going to be the difference as to whether you do well or not. So it's beneficial to everyone if you guys, you know, if you can help other people get faster in those conditions, then you've got to learn to step it up again, you know. And I think that's the way you've got to push the envelope. You've always got to be trying to go faster, and if you can help other people do that, then they're going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, and especially being a Kiwi here in New Zealand, it's really, really important. We don't have the competition, so we, like, of all of Europe, where people can come from one country to another. So we've really got to work together here, get as good as we can, and then we can take that to the world. The last thing was a bit of Kiwi ingenuity. I believe that this is all tightened up a lot. Like, we did have a few things like rope manufacturers here in New Zealand, such as Fine Line, helping us develop ropes that were specific to the Opti, and a few things we did. I remember everyone, really, other countries looking at your boats and what we'd done, and it was
carbon fiber bailers and carbon paddles and things like that. They all got ruled out pretty quickly. But even before that, I remember with guys like Paul St. Hanson and Dan Wilcox, who back in the day before the restrictions were so tight on the foils and things, you know, they turned up to the Worlds with homemade foils that were, you know, better than all the mass production foils. And so, you know, and then there was the year with the big top North Sails that they had, you know, in 2004, I think it was, where they had, you know, extra sail area than everyone else, finding loopholes in the rule. And so, yeah, I think it's always probably been something that our nation has been pretty good at, but it just comes back to putting in the time, you know. It's trying to find edges where you can and doing your homework as such. You know, you don't turn up to a test if you can figure out what's going to be in a test at school before you go and do it. You're going to research as much as you can and try and get all the answers. So I think that's very much a case of the mentality that Kiwis have, is just trying to get ahead of the game wherever you can.
Yeah, nice. And you see that sort of translate right through to the America's Cup. The Kiwis are the guys that are trying to push the boundaries, really. So the last little things there is we basically put all these things together, and it's all a bit of a puzzle. You put it all together, and then we went to the Worlds. I remember one of the other coaches saying to me as we went down for the last race, and the team was all sitting in good spots, saying, "Are you nervous, Wilsey?" And I remember saying, "No, I'm not really nervous because we've done all the work back home. I can't be nervous. I'd only be nervous if we hadn't done the training, but I wasn't nervous because we had done it." Chris could probably tell you about what I said to him before the last race too.
Yeah, I was nervous, obviously. Sort of, I guess, you know, we'd been going through the regatta sort of day by day, and I think maybe after the first day I was like 17th or 18th or something, and then the second day I was maybe second, and then the third, fourth, fifth days or whatever, I was, you know, changing between kind of first and third overall based on like when the drops came into play and whatnot. And we sort of went into the last day. It was a 2-race day, I think, and there's maybe, I think I had 6 points ahead of the guy that needed to beat, basically, because Wilsey identified, there's 3 guys who could win it. Wilsey identified one of them as having no chance. It was a lightish day on the last day, and he was a big guy. So it came down to 2 people, basically, and I wasn't racing the guy that I needed to beat in either of the races. And, you know, went out and got a 6th in the first race and asked Wilsey, you know, what did he get? He got a 6th as well. So it was kind of like your 6-point buffer going to the last race, but again, you're not racing him. And he was in the race in front of us. So I got to see him start, and I was sitting there in the coach with Willsey, and he had a real good start, kind of like almost port tacked the fleet off the pin. And so I was sort of going, fuck it, right, well, we're gonna turn it on here. Like, Willsey, what do you reckon? Like, you know, hoping that he was going to give me some kind of big prep up speech and tell me that, you know, I've done everything, I'm going to be good enough, you know, this is my moment kind of thing. And he just kind of said, oh, whatever happens, mate, just go out and have fun. And I remember sort of leaving the coach boat, like, in probably quite a bit of disbelief, really, you know, with all the emotions that were sort of going on at the time, thinking, like, how can you have fun when, you know, we put so much work into this, and, like, I've got to execute a serious sort of race strategy here and be right on the money to sort of take it out. Otherwise, it's all kind of going to waste. And he, you know, as I was sailing off, he just said, you know, sort of remember that there's only 2 guys that are in your position right now, and every single other guy here, there's 256 people here that would kill to be in the position that you're in. So just go and enjoy it. And so I was sort of sailing off, and, you know, you're looking around with a minute or so to go in the start, and you sort of think, like, yeah, he's right. You know, like, we've worked so hard to get to this point, and there's only 2 people left that can win it. And if you'd offered anyone the chance to be in our position, everyone would have jumped at it. So, you know, the work had been done, and it was just about trying to, you know, go out there and sail as good a race as we could, and trust that, you know, we'd done everything right and it was going to pay off. And obviously it did in the end. So there was a few hiccups in that race along the way. I ended up getting stuck on the finish boat at one point, but managed not to hit it or anything. It was just the foils getting stuck on the anchor. But there's plenty of those moments throughout the race where you see your world sort of exploding in front of you. But yeah, when it comes down at the end, it was all pretty amazing sort of feeling. And so, yeah, those words, I sort of never forget that conversation. It was 14 years ago now or something, but yeah. So,
still
pretty
haunts
cool.
All right. So we'll rip into sort of how we pulled this program together. Basically, now you guys will see that there's a triangle there. That's how we would put any program together. The bigger the base of a triangle, the more stable it is. If it's got a skinny base, you can still get up to the peak, but it's not as stable. So if you've got more time, you can put more work into the base. So I basically broke up each part of the triangle into sailing fitness, sailing fitness, sailing fitness, sailing fitness. And all these guys are super fit. Whenever I've had my best regatta, I'm fit. Chris would say the same. Right now, I probably need to do a bit of work on it. Maybe Chris too, especially after this isolation. Now, so the base of our sailing is boat handling skills. So we'd learn to sail the boat. We'd do all those boat handling drills, lots and lots and lots of drills. And the base of our fitness would be aerobic fitness. So things like running, cycling, rowing, anything like that to really get your lungs pumping. And I believe that all those things should be over 40 minutes long. The aerobic base, you're sort of okay with all that so far, Chris and Des?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, getting the basic skills and your base fitness at the start of your program, getting them up to scratch, so then you sort of leave them and concentrate on the other points, working up to the top of the triangle.
Yeah,
I'd say as well, just on that, Woolsey, with both the boat handling and the aerobic fitness base, is like the intensity as well. Like, you know, obviously, you know, some people might struggle to go for a 40-minute run as it is, but eventually, if you keep doing, you'll get to that point. And so, just making sure that you're trying to keep those things as intense as possible as well. Like, you know, I remember a lot of the runs we used to do on Tower would be big hill runs, you know, 40 minutes, and those were really tough. You know, it wasn't just running 40 minutes on the flat; it was like full mountain climbs kind of thing. And so, yeah, anytime you have a chance to lift the intensity, you're putting something in the bank for later. You know, you're getting ahead of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, and just on that, yeah, keep lifting the intensity. But if you can't run 40 minutes at the start, you might as long as you stay out for 40 minutes, you might run 20 at the start, have a 10-minute little fast walk, and then another 10 at the end, but stay out for the whole 40 minutes. Don't come back after 20 minutes. Then we moved into working on our weaknesses. So we might have found that, you know, heavy air sailing's our weakness, or bailing's our weakness, and we pinpoint those things and would really work on them. We'd also work on our weakness and fitness. It might be that I've got a sweet tooth and eat too much sugar. It might be that I've got a poor mindset that that I think I'm not going to do well. You know, I work on those weaknesses, and then as we get closer to the event, this triangle's going on, and we start working more on our tuning, and our boat tuning, our boat speed. So we might be putting in some new equipment at that time, and all the while then we start really our race training. So I really think that it's important to get out and do some regattas leading up to, and the Opti circuit's pretty good. It's got the travel series leading up to the nationals. So so that all works out pretty well. And the fitness, like Chris said, is starting to really step up. You should all be pretty ripped then, and finding it pretty hard to sit still, driving your parents all nuts. That was you, right, Chris?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, basically, I'd turn up to every Worlds training straight after a 90-minute game of football that I was playing for school. So it was, it was all Saturdays, especially, were all go for us.
Yeah. No, you could tell the whole team was fit as a fiddle, and then we'd do a bit more competition. And then I do remember this before the nationals. Like, I remember getting messages from people in the team. You know, I've just polished this or done that. So they're just finishing off their boat work, boat prep. Desi's probably the same with your Paper Tiger at the moment, right? Really pimping that boat out just before.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to add with this this triangle we got here is I think you need to look at this alongside your sailing calendar. So your your base and your boat handling skills would probably be through the winter, and working towards, you know, midsummer or whenever the nationals are, obviously for the Optis, Easter normally. And, you know, you've got a lot of regattas in between those ones, so you can kind of tailor a little bit of, you can shuffle it around a bit, you can tailor it to, okay, Auckland Champs or End of the Island Regatta, you know, okay, we need to do a little bit of boat work here to get the boat ready for that regatta and that sort of thing. But you need to be looking at the calendar with your triangle here to work through, okay, when am I going to do these points? When am I going to work on my speed? You know, so you know sort of what weeks you're going to be doing what. And I know you all the sailors probably have coaches, and they could, you know, you can work in with your coach like what Chris and Wilsey were doing, and you know, talk through this stuff with them and putting it in place, and so you have a clear view of what you're going to be doing all the time, type of thing, and it just structures it a lot easier. You know, in your mind, things will be a lot clearer, and you'll have a really good sort of pathway to your pinnacle regatta.
Really good point, Des. And one other thing is, yeah, I had this triangle, and like you say, I overlaid the sailing calendar, and I'd put it on a wall planner so I could actually see the time ticking by quite clearly, rather than a standard diary that you turn the page and you don't know what's next. A wall planner.
I had the same, wall planner, so you can see it clearly, and you know, you're looking at it every day, and you're looking at the end goal, you know, and Easter, nationals, or whatever regattas you're targeting. Definitely a good idea.
Cool. And then the last bit is probably the bit that used to drive me crazy. Was basically a taper period, and a taper period is having 5 days off from fitness before the event and having a few days off sailing from the event. You want to be chomping at the bit to get back out there sailing, and you want your body fully recovered before that event. So that's a taper period, and it's pretty hard to do, but if you've prepared in advance enough, you should have time for that taper period. Yeah, if you've been preparing all year, and the people that are out there training the day before the event, that sort of shows me that they're not really sorted yet, you know. They should be resting up, because it's quite a taxing event doing the nationals or worlds or whatever regatta. So all good. We'll move on here. So, hey, look, just moving on here. This is not what you have to do. This is just a suggestion. And this is everyone. I'm a big believer in routines for the day, routines for even sailing, and routines for parts of sailing, like starting. So we can just go through this. And Chris's routine, I know, is totally different to my routine. His routine's a bit more laid back, maybe. Yeah. So everyone has different ways of relaxing and stuff, but you know, let's go through this and just have a little look at how it sort of goes. So the first thing I had is waking up in plenty of time. It takes the body over 2 hours to fully wake up. So you don't want to be waking up really late in the piece and be waking up halfway up the first beat. The race is over by then. So making sure you get up in plenty of time. I know some of you guys love your sleep. Chris was one of them, but yeah. So his wake up time might vary from someone like mine. And then I just had basically going out, just getting a bit of fresh air, just to help me wake up was the next thing. And then I remember the next one after that was having a normal breakfast. And I say normal breakfast. I remember doing my first P class nationals, and my mum had cooked me a special breakfast, you know, because it was going to be a big day. And my body wasn't used to this big special breakfast, and it didn't really go down too well. And it really caused some issues out on the racetrack. So, you know, just...
issues, was it?
You know, I was violently ill. Yeah. So just have what's normal for you. Okay. Some people like to have a shower to wake up. Some people prefer it at night. Some have one morning and night. I'd sort of have one in the morning to get going and get up. And I like to check I've got all my stuff packed in my sailing bag. If I did it the night before, I'd still be checking it. That's why I just do it in the morning of. And also loading the boat and going through my checklist. I remember as a young fella turning up to a regatta, and I'd forgotten my stays to my P class because I didn't go through my checklist. So my dad made me walk home to go get those stays, and he just sat down and read the newspaper to teach me a lesson, not to forget anything. But he was pretty surprised to see me back there so quick with the stays. I'd actually gone up the hill and asked my grandparents to drive me back home and get the stays. So, anyway, anytime you want to chip in with any stuff, you guys just feel free. So, yeah, I like to get to the boat park early. So I get a pretty nice park and don't have to walk forever and just not been in a mad scramble. I like to be pretty relaxed. What about you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The regattas are so busy that, sometimes you can park miles away. So getting getting to the club early enough to you know, get your boat off, get in a good position. Like Woolsey said, it sometimes is a mad scramble, and it's always a busy time. Getting everything ready, especially on the first day of the regatta, getting your boat there, rigged up, everything sorted. So, you know, giving yourself plenty of time, going through that checklist, I think super important. Whether it's you can do it in your head or if you need to write it down. You know, we've all forgot the life jacket or boom or main sheet. You know, it's we've all done it in the past, and you know, sometimes you still do it, but to go through that checklist and make sure that you know, you've got all of the stuff you need, so you're not stressing out when you get to the beach.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you got to take a step backwards and just take a sec. It will actually end up saving you time in the long run if you're not in a scramble. So then just going through, sometimes we'd wash the hull in the morning, especially when we were at regattas like the Worlds or Asians in the Opti. Basically any salt crystals would dry and they'd be pretty rough on the bottom of the boat. So a little bit of a soapy water wash would really make the hull nice and clean. Even if you'd cleaned it the night before, the rain could come down pretty heavy and flick dust and grime up onto the boat, or there could be a lot of wind through the boat park. So just making sure your hull's nice and smooth is a really good thing to do. Skipping a few ahead because we've got a conscious of time is checking the notice board, checking for any changes, so there's no surprises out there is always a good thing. And really going through your weather forecast. What are you going to expect out there? It's getting better and better, eh, Chris? What do you use these days?
I use predict wind mostly. It seems to be pretty good across the board. John Bill just sort of obviously running that, and yeah, we run that everywhere around the world pretty much. There's always sort of icons on the map there that you can click on that are close enough to the sailing area. It's sort of changed a lot for us over the recent times because our courses have got smaller and the boats have gotten faster. So, you know, the forecast, I mean, whilst it's obviously still important, it's not so much about trying to figure out what a trend might be because the breeze is more geographically influenced by the land. We're always often racing very close to land. So it's always important, obviously, to make sure that you're figuring out how to set the boat up in the right sort of modes and things like that. But yeah, especially when you're in the Opti, like if you're going out in the water for sometimes up to 6 hours, probably, you know, a full day on the water, it's really important to make sure that you, for safety reasons on its own, to make sure you know what the weather's doing.
Yeah, it's just good to also eliminate surprises and sort of know what to expect, even what sailing gear to take out. Like, hey, is it going to get windy later? Should I chuck a spray jacket in my coach's boat? Or, you know,
hiking pants or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so going through it, it's drinking fluids. Fluids, basically, in my layman's terms, help your thoughts get around your body. If you're dehydrated, you're no good to anyone. You should really be going for a pee before every race, and your pee should be clear if you're standing up having a pee if you're a bloke. So, yeah, just definitely make sure you're well hydrated, and also launching in plenty of time for the start. On the way out to the start, try not just to chat to your mates and stuff the whole way out there. Sort of notice what's going on. Notice where the puffs are coming from. What's the sort of interval between them, all that sort of stuff. And then try and have a bit of a sail on the beat to get an idea for the wind shifts and patterns and your setup of your boat. And once you've done that, when you're sailing back downwind towards the start line again, sail properly. Try and, if you just do the beat but don't do the run properly, you won't know which jibe's going to be faster because it's lined up better for the waves and all those little things there. And then the next bit really is, if you've got time, it's really good to do a little bit of a sail with your buddy. We did a lot of that at the Worlds, Chris? Like a lot of straight lining, get you all the same speed, and then we'd get two going left, two going right, one going up the middle. Have you found that helped?
Yeah, massively, especially when it's not necessarily an obvious decision as to what side of the racecourse you think might be favoured. Going back to when you're sailing on your own, trying to qualify yourself for an event, you're on your own basically. You can buddy up with maybe a club mate or someone that's a close friend. But when you're in that setup with the world's team, like that was one of the most effective ways that we could, check and then obviously double check what side of the racecourse we sort of thought was favoured. I think that was a real valuable tool.
Nice. And just on that, sort of once we get back and we're doing the checking in on the line, check the line, the next thing we did was spotting the marks. How often do people not actually see the marks? And if they can see them, then they know, oh man, that's really not square and it's going to be a lot longer on port tack or something. So make sure you spot those marks before. Don't just assume they're upwind. And then the last thing we sort of did was rechecking the line. You've checked it, but sometimes there's a little bit of a wind shift in the last couple of minutes before the start, and that is the difference between a good sailor and a bad sailor. They're always checking, always doing something. So we're nearly done on this one, on our just daily schedule. So we get the 5 minute, check the 4. I used to do a little practice on the 3. If I was going to start at the boat end, I'd be sitting there having a little go, going through it. These are things I'm just thinking in my mind. 20 seconds to go, I'm really in control of the boat. And if I'm sheeting on at 0, I'm too late. I got to be sheeting on early because your opti is going to take 10 seconds to get up to speed, so you want to be sheeting on before that gun. And then let's say now you've had a good race, the day's all over. You want to sail in as quickly as possible, pack the boat up, check the damage. And if something is broken, try and fix it that night. How often do you say, I'll do that in the morning, and then you end up in that mad scramble? That's happened to you before, eh, guys?
Yeah, you just, take your shackle key and just go over the boat really and check that nothing's come loose. Obviously you'll know if you've done some damage or hit someone or something like that. But just the little stuff, frayed ropes, worn bungee, a knot on your hiking strap or something come undone, just little stuff like that, if you say, oh, I'll do it in the morning, and then, your car breaks down or you arrive late at the yacht club and you're rushing and you forget to do it. So nothing like here and now, to do stuff like that.
Yeah, nice. The last couple of things are checking the results are correct. Sometimes they actually get the numbers mixed up, something so simple. So before you go home, check that. And another one is checking the protest. Once the protest time has sort of the flag's gone up, they've got to have the protest lodged. Check you're not in one. I remember actually leaving a youth trials. No one had got near me all day, and there should have been no protest, but someone had lodged a protest against us, and I didn't know, so I didn't turn up to the protest, and as a consequence lost that protest. So just check those things, and yeah, and then enjoy. So hey guys, we've run out of time. We had a little bit more to go through, like a race checklist, but I think we'll have to save that for another day. But Des, have there been any questions that anyone's wrote?
No, nothing's come through, so we're all good on that.
Okay.
Feel free to post some questions if you have them now. We've got a few minutes that we could answer anything.
Yeah, but failing that, if there are no questions, thanks a lot for tuning in, and thanks so much, Chris. It's good to work with you again, and Des, I look forward to getting back to work and being in the same office after this is all over.